or people who were not able to come can watch it at a later date as well. So just throwing that out there. This is going to be a safe space to learn. It's okay to throw yourself out and talk in the discussions, and know that it is definitely a non-judgmental safe space. Technology ready. One of the things we want to make sure for attendance purposes and just for discussion so that we can respond to you is that your first and last name are displayed. If you aren't sure how to do that, because we do have a couple that aren't, you can go right up to these 3 little dots and go to rename, and you can put your first and last name there. Oh, I forgot to introduce ourselves, as Ms. Kate just informed me. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Cassandra Barone, and I teach 8th grade English at Compton Junior High, and the co-presenter is?
I am Jennifer Pate, and I teach at Sierra Middle School, 8th grade ELA.
All right. We are going to try to remain open and figure out what works. This is going to be a crazy time for all of us, and so we definitely want to figure out what's going to be our best foot forward. Engage and participate fully. We will be asking you to answer questions in the chat. We'll be having some polls. We'll be having some breakout groups. So just be ready to participate. Everyone, if you can stay on mute and use the chat feature to ask questions, that would be the best way. That way we're not all talking over each other. Or if you want to talk, you can also use the raise your hand feature in the chat, and we can actually have a discussion that way as well. And then at the end of this session, you will be given a link for the evaluation and a link to sign out. So there, in the last 10 minutes, you'll be given a link where you need to, it's like an electronic version of the old school sign out sheet. And so that will be go live in the last 10 minutes of the session. So I think before we even move on, do you guys have any questions about any of the norms? No?
Nope, not seeing anything.
All right. These are our BCSD core priorities. If you've been in the district, you've seen them multiple times. If you're new to the district, this might be your first time seeing them. Core priority 1 is a culture of collective efficacy, believing that we can. I think for right now, to me, this is like the most important one, to believe that we're going to be able to do this distance learning thing and make it a true learning experience for kids, and that we can do it together, that we're going to have to be working together to come up with best practices. But I think we need to believe that we can do it, because we can, especially as a team. Priority 2, a culture of teaching and learning, believing that students can master content standards, even in a virtual world. Priority 3, a culture of student-centered schools. And this is all about the importance of relationships and making sure that our learning is student-centered as well. I think this is also going to be important right now. How do we establish relationships with students and families in this time? And if you haven't attended any of the cell sessions, you should check that out, because they have a lot of great resources for that. And number 4, a culture of access and inclusion to support all learners. And this is still going to be just as important in a virtual world. Things have not changed as far as the priorities. They're just going to look a little different. All right. We have a message from Mark, so I'm going to go ahead and play that really quickly for us.
Good morning and welcome to Summer Virtual Institute. I appreciate and thank all of you for joining us this week and willing to learn with us as we lean into a new year of learning with our students. This is not the instructional program that we had hoped to accomplish this year in terms of our students starting the year in a virtual format. but I believe that together we will build a strong instructional program to support the students of our district. So I want to speak a little bit about the importance of this week's learning with respect to our instructional program, and emphasize a couple of key points for us before we start today. First and foremost, I'd like to emphasize the importance of understanding what the state is requiring of school districts this year, in that there are a set number of instructional minutes that we must adhere to. It is our goal that through the virtual nature of our instructional program over the first quarter, that we can rise above and beyond those minimum minutes, ensuring that our students receive ample person to the best of our ability instruction, meaning synchronous learning, where we are zooming in with our students online, supporting them, teaching them, equipping them with the skills to be successful in this virtual format. And then we are also balancing that with what we call asynchronous time, where we are assigning kids to complete assignments through many of our instructional tools and resources, while we as teachers and educators work in small groups with students who simply need more time with intervention. And so you're going to receive a lot of information from our instructional services support team. You are going to receive a lot of tools and resources to support you with the instructional design of our program for this year. Just know that we're in this together. Let's support each other. Let's be there for each other, and let's work together to make the very best and strongest instructional program for our students. So once again, thank you very much. I look forward to learning with you this week, and I look forward to a successful school year. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. All right. Thank you, Mark. All right, and this is in my way. Sorry, I have to move this bar because then I can't move this bar. Okay, so establishing purpose for the training today, for the discussion today. How will we support literacy through a balanced literacy framework in any context? And so what we're talking about there is, balanced literacy, reader alouds, shared reads, and writing. And how do we do that in any context? So whether that is digital, whether that is hybrid, or whether that is fully in person. And we will know we will have been successful when we understand the essential learning for our students and can find and create resources that support that learning. So
I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll so we know where you guys are and get to know who's in our room. So you'll see two different questions. First one, where you at? So where's your school site? And then the second one is who's in the room, whether you're a teacher, administrator, or a support staff. So this is a really neat feature that you can use on the Zoom platform if you're not using Google Meets. And just real quick check-in with your students as well. Got quite a few supportive people in the house. Got a lot of teachers to special education, school support staff. Awesome. And I'm gonna go ahead and end our poll here in about 2 seconds. So the neat thing about this feature over here is that you can share the results back with your students so they can refer to it and then also collaborate in addition. Thanks, guys.
okay. And then is this where you're gonna ask about the balanced literacy poll as well?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
All right.
Oh, yeah, actually it was. Oops. And then we're gonna go ahead and do one more. I'm so sorry. All right, and then let's see this one over here, because we are going to be discussing and covering balanced literacy, and then as well as our essential learning. So in this case, how familiar are you with the balanced literacy model? We got one expert. Awesome.
Nice.
And I like this tool because this is where we can start to learn from each other, especially when we see some that are somewhat comfortable and novice. So we do hope that in this session, you're going to find those resources in order for us to progress in this where you do feel more comfortable. Awesome. Thank you so much, you guys. And then there we are right there. So it's good to see that we're kind of everywhere. So we're all kind of learning from each other during this session. Thank you.
Okay, so one thing that we do, we want to encourage a ton of questions. So please, anytime you have a question over at any point, just put that in the chat. However, these are some of the things that this is not the focus of our meeting, our training today. So we just want to say there is a district parking lot. And so if you have questions about assessment, the school schedule, returning to school, teacher prep or contact time, technology issues, or grading, any questions along those lines are going to be directed to the district parking lot. And then they are going to take those questions and put out some type of answers. So at some point, I can't promise you when, but just know those are not the focus of today's learning, and so they will be referred to the district parking lot. Okay. So when we talk about balanced literacy, especially now and especially in our digital world, and we talk about why do we need to focus on balanced literacy, some of the questions, some of the ideas are, students have experienced learning loss due to, having to go on crisis learning last year, and our need to narrow the learning because, we have a large number of standards in ELA and we cannot adequately and thoroughly address all those, especially in our distance format. So we need to narrow those down and pick, like we used to call focus standards, and resources, which we are going to be reviewing a lot of today. So we want to talk about, like, what do you think, if you had, I'm trying to phrase the question. If you can respond in the chat, how do you feel that we can best address some of these? Like, just what are you thinking? Because I know we're all thinking about going back. So what are you thinking? How can we address the learning loss? How do we need to narrow the standards? And what do you think are your needs for resources? You don't have to address all three, just pick one.
Yes, we do. So high engagement, interest, resources to get them online and coming back, short assessments via Google Forms.
Absolutely. Short assessments are going to be important. We're not going to be able to give long benchmarks like we were prior.
And really focus on that response-based teaching.
Right.
Nice. Love it. Learning with so many standards, we need to focus on essential standards. I am so glad you mentioned that. You are going to be very pleased, Michelle. Focus on learning that will give us the most bang for our buck, utilize instructional time wisely. I absolutely. And with these units that have been created, you are going to see that. Thanks, Lydia. Yeah. Guided reading for those that required it. Okay.
We can discuss guided reading a little bit pretty soon when we start looking at the balanced literacy model, because that's going to be a hard one to pull off in a digital world.
Yeah, and in this time, we are becoming more like YouTubers and educators, diving into this realm, encouraging students to read more.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and whatever it may be. High interest activities. Okay, so
I am loving all these ideas and agree with the high interest, because if we can't think about in our regular classroom how hard it is sometimes to keep some of their focus. So we're going to need to be trying to, amp that up as much as we can in the digital world. I know in what I call the crisis learning, I did a lot of assigning and not as much teaching. So I'm going to definitely have to shift my own focus away from so much assigning and really getting in there and trying to come up with ways to engage them during the instructional pieces.
Hey, really quick, I want to address the guided reading because it is going to be a little bit more difficult to do guided reading. But conferencing and independent reading can have the same power as guided reading. And distance learning is perfect for conferencing and independent reading. So we can talk about that a little bit at the end. So just keep that in mind, that although guided reading will be difficult because they won't have level text, they don't have access, they can independently read. You can set goals when they're conferencing. And we did a distance learning conference PD, and we can get you access to that if that's something that you need. So
it's linked in our presentation. Yay! All right. Thank you everyone for responding and your feedback. Appreciate it. So here is our guided reading spectrum. So I'm going to give you a few, maybe 30 seconds to look this over, and then we are going to talk about it. So for 30 seconds, you get to listen to some more music and check out the balanced reading spectrum and be ready to discuss. That's not the right one. Okay, so again, in the chat, what stands out to you about the balanced literacy spectrum? Like, what do you see? What do you notice? Don't be shy.
Nice, thanks, Dallas. It's like a sliding scale from most support to independence.
What else do you see out there? What else do you notice?
You read my mind, Jesus. Gradual release of responsibility. Teacher support never ends. Thanks, Mark. More confident in reading? Yeah. Thanks, Jason.
In the instructional world, this is what we call wait time. Would anybody else like to add anything?
That's a really good question, Wandra. I think that's something I can add to the district parking lot because I don't have the answer to that question.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to leave the chat open and just ask some more like very specific questions about the teacher office support. So looking at our continuum, where do we see the most teacher support? So looking at the continuum, where do we see the most teacher support? Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Padilla and Jason. And I think I missed Glenn, Myrna. Absolutely in the read aloud and the shared read. And so when we're looking at the read aloud, how much of that responsibility is on the students? Thank you, Kathy and Jesus. Very, very little. During the read aloud, really, the students, you're doing all the reading. The students don't even have the text in front of them, right? You're reading aloud to them. And you stop at your key points and you ask your questions and they discuss and they can share out with you. So that's their role, but they don't have a role in the actual reading process. Their role is more in discussion with their peers and discussion with you, and not in the actual reading of the text. But again, like we said, they don't even have the text. So you're reading it to them and then just asking them those, what do you notice? What do you wonder? And you can dig a little deeper and ask them, you know, what do you think the character did, you know, responded to this for? Or if it's independent text, you know, what do you believe that this happened based on the text? Questions like that. However, when we move to shared read, what do we notice with teacher support and student participation? So when we move on to shared read, what do we notice about teacher support and student participation?
Feel free to use the hand raise option. So that way we're utilizing different response and collaborative strategies.
Yes, thank you. To Ms. Padilla, students are more active, teacher role decreases. Thank you, Jesus. Student participation increases and teacher support decreases. We begin to release more responsibility to the students. Students are participating more. Excellent. So in a shared read, it's important to remember that for the shared read, the students actually have the text as well. So in this case, they have the text and you have the text. You can have them take some responsibility in the reading process. I know Ms. Kate has a video available for you guys to watch later where she uses the whisper read strategy. So the kids are whisper reading while she's reading. So you're definitely putting a little more responsibility on them. They have the text, they can take a little bit of notes, whatever they need to do with that text as you are guiding them through it. You still have, if you look at it, you still have the larger piece of responsibility. It's just now they have the text in front of them. They can also, you know, annotate or, you know, participate in the reading with whisper reading or partner reading or however you know, whatever strategies you want to use. And then as you notice, as we slide down the guided reading. Yes, thank you, Mancha. Shared reading is all about the strategy because you are going to have a focused strategy. So, and then they practice using that strategy. Thank you, Mancha. And then we move to guided reading. And what do we notice in the guided reading? The guided reading is almost 50-50, right? So they're doing a lot of the reading and you're doing a lot of the support with the strategies. Right.
50-50 model.
Good job, Mark.
Excellent. Support with strategies, absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah, we really want to build their their skills by using these strategies. So that way it's second nature. Because we really want to develop strategic thinkers by use of this model. Thanks, Mark.
Absolutely. And then finally, we have independent reading. And as we can see in the independent reading, the responsibility is put onto the student, right? So now they're independently reading and hopefully practicing the strategies that they have been learning from read aloud, shared read, guided reading, and now they can do it on their own.
Jason, I am so glad you addressed that because that's where a lot of teachers do need a little bit of clarity between guided and a shared reading. Would you like to address that real quick?
Sure. Oh, I didn't. I thought you were going to keep going. No, that's good.
Okay.
Okay. So in this shared read, so I'll tell you how, like one of the ways I do it. That doesn't mean it's the way. It's just one of the ways that I do it. I do a lot of shared reading with informational text because I feel like they need more support. sometimes with the informational text, as the text is more complex. And so they have the text, I have the text. If we could be looking at, so we will pick our strategy for reading. So maybe we are working on finding inferences. So as I'm going through the text with them, we're going to read the text, and sometimes in a shared read, the text can be a little above their level because you're going to be providing them that support. And then we're going to go through, we're going to read, I will read some to them, maybe they read with me. We're going to stop along the way, and we're going to talk about, like, this is happening in the text. What can you infer, because that's my skill I'm working on. What can you infer from this event that happened? Or what can you infer are the reasons for what happened? If you're doing fiction, you could say, you know, what can you infer about the characters here? What could you infer for the motivation of this character? You want to keep taking it back to the skill that the strategy that you're focusing on. But you are still doing most of the work. And like I said, the text can be above their level because you're providing that support. Whereas if you're doing guided reading, they're reading a leveled text on their own, and then you are still kind of pausing in and asking them questions about the text. What do you notice? What do you wonder? You know, and there are like suggested questions you can use during guided reading. But what to me, one of the main differences is that the text in guided reading is on their level and they're reading it. Whereas in the shared read, the text can be above their level, probably should be above their level, and then you're still doing the one with the most of the reading. Does that make sense?
I have a super easy analogy it's an analogy that helps me remember. It's exactly what you said, but here's an analogy. If I'm in football practice and and we're running drills. Running the drills is your shared read. Your coach is out there with you, showing you how to run the drills. You guys are doing it all together. You're running the drills, you're moving together. Then guided reading would be the scrimmage where your coach is sitting there watching you, seeing, did you do all the things you did in the drills? But the coach isn't doing it. They're watching you do it to see if you are running the drills. That's the best way to remember it. Shared reading, football practice, running drills. Guided reading, scrimmage.
Yay, thanks, Monchal. And then finally, we have independent reading. Again, they're reading on their own. And I'm a little soapboxy when it comes to independent reading, because in order for independent reading to be meaningful for kids, they need to have choice. They need to be reading books or content, even other content of their choice. So a lot of people will say, well, the kids won't read during independent reading. That's true a lot when we're forcing them to read a particular book and they don't find that particular book interesting, so they won't read. However, if you're letting kids choose books that they are interested in, and that might mean books above their level, it might mean books below their level, this is their independent reading time. So it's important that we make sure that we are giving them that option. And in distance learning, we're gonna need to definitely be flexible. So I know, like last year, I had a kid who didn't have a lot of books at home. So she was reading articles on the internet, and then she was, talking to me during conferencing and writing on her reading log about the articles. So all the reading was informational at that time, but that's okay because that's what she wanted to read. And that's what she was able to read at that point, because like I said, during virtual learning, we're definitely gonna have to be a little more flexible. But even in the classroom, there needs to be that flexibility to allow students to read what they wanna read. And the other part of that is they need to be given the time. We can't expect them to just independently read when you know, on their own time. Like we need to give them some time in class, 15 minutes, 10 minutes. If you have a block, maybe 20 minutes, where you can give them time to independently read books of their choice. So I would be curious to know, and if you guys, I want to hear your voices a little bit. So if you guys can raise your hand in the chat feature to respond, what are some ways that you have encouraged independent reading in your classroom? So if you raise your hand in the chat feature, then we can hear from some of you guys. So what are some strategies that you've used to get kids to independently read in your classroom? Kathy, are you ready? Oh, Jay. Okay, Jesus, go ahead.
So I know that the kiddos would receive certain points on AR for whatever book they read, but in the classroom, I would also give them points, and once they received a certain amount, they were able to choose a place that they wanted to go to, and I would bring them something from like Taco Bell or McDonald's or whatever. Because I used to do that as a kid. My teacher would make us build a fake hamburger. And if you read one book, you had a bun. Then you read another book, it was a patty. Then you read another book, it was the lettuce and tomato and so on and so on.
Excellent. That's a great idea.
That's a great idea. Thank you, Jesus.
Michelle, you have your hand up. Do you want to go ahead and share?
Yeah, I find that being a reader myself is a big one in my classroom. Like I would post the books that I had read. And then like at the start of their independent reading time, I'd just be like, hey, I'm reading this book and it's about this and this. And then when I finished the book, I would like put it near the front. And I found that by kind of like sharing that I read too and just kind of talking about some of the choices that I make, the kids are like, oh, can I read that next? Or, oh, that sounds really great. I would like to try that out too. So that just kind of also leads into having like diversity and like book selection in my own classroom library.
Anyone else have their hand up?
That was awesome, Michelle. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay. Jason, I saw you put yours in the chat. Do you want to just tell everybody? You're still muted.
Sorry about that. I have somewhat of a difficulty in getting my kids to embrace reading. And I have this huge classroom library. It's varied from lower level books all the way to some stuff that might be challenging. There may be one or two kids that I had last year that actually read at a pretty high level, but a lot of the kids just had no interest at all in finding books. We go to the library, give them plenty of time to look out for a book, and I'd actually go around the library and talk to them. Hey, what are your interests? Oh, you might be interested in something. You might like this, and I'd tell them a little bit about what I knew about the author or the book, and I just felt like there was not a whole lot of really excitement about independent reading. So that was my challenge last year. I think Jesus, what he brought up was an awesome idea that actually I think, well, I'll be implementing, as I can this next year. I think it's a great idea with the hamburger. We have a Sonic down the way, and I think a Sonic gift card for reading so many books is an awesome idea. So.
Good. That's an excellent one. Thank you for sharing. It can be a struggle. I do like what Michelle said as far as being a reader helps a lot, and letting them know what you're reading. I have a poster in my classroom that says what Miss Barone is currently reading, and then I just stick the book covers up there. But then every time I finish a book, I tell the kids about it. So I do like a little mini book talk with them. And so I will be like, hey, I just read this great book, blah, 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 and I'll tell them all about it. And then I set it on the top of the classroom library. And that way they see it and they can go like, oh, that sounds really interesting. I want to read that. I think it's great that you have a big classroom library. I think that is always the way to go. And the more books you have that have students that have characters that look like your students, so they're the same age range as your students. Maybe you have books that are about you know, from Hispanic authors that have Hispanic characters, or African American authors who have African American characters, or, you know, whatever you can, however you can start to diversify that library so that your kids can find books with characters that are like them. They also will get to spark interest. There are so many options out there, but I think that having a good class library is one of them. Modeling reading that you are a reader is one of them. Incentives definitely help, that's for sure. And so it's all about what you can throw out there. Just added to the chat about graphic novels. That was last year, that was my thing. I added tons of graphic novels to my library, and the kids love them. And I don't worry about what level they are. This is about enjoying the reading. And so and then what I love about it is once they start with the graphic novels and they're successful and they find something they like, then they'll start reading other novels. So it's almost like a bridge for some kids in order to get into more independent reading on their own. There are some options for virtual novels. First Book, if you go onto First Book and create an account, which almost every BCSE teacher would qualify for that, because they will give you free access to their online library if you work at a Title I school. So if you go to First Book Marketplace and you can request, and they will send you access to their online library with, like I said, all you have to do is work at a Title I school. And then Audible also has free right now. So if you search free Audible books, and the First Book selection is going to be a little more high interest than the Audible, but the Audible is still free, and there are some good books in there. They have Harry Potter, and they have some other selections, and they have them by characters and categories, so it's pretty fun. So those are a couple that are available online that are for free. Okay. And we're going to move on. So one thing we don't know a lot about the scheduling right now, but one thing we do know is that you're going to be teaching in 90-minute blocks. So just moving, as you're trying to plan and move forward, you can just kind of keep that in your mind that you're going to be planning for 90-minute blocks for each period. All right. Okay, so now that we have spent a lot of time talking about the why, we're going to start looking at what resources we have created for you guys. I will say this, that just know, and I'll say it more than once, that we created a lot of resources. It is totally up to you if or how you use them. So you can use all of them, you can use some of them, you can use none of them. Like the resources that are out there are just resources for you. But the thing that is not non-negotiable, the thing that is non-negotiable is that all of your lessons are based on our essential standards. So just looking at this document, right now we're just going to look at the screenshot, but I want you to tell me, what do you notice about how the document is organized, or what do you see there?
The essential standards.
Mm-hmm.
You want me to share? Okay.
Right now they're just supposed to look at this, and then we'll share them. Okay. So we're good. Yes, Michelle, I love that. It has prerequisite skills to consider, especially right now, like you said, especially with the loss of learning. What else do you guys notice? You want to respond in chat?
Yeah, definitely. So focusing on 4 for 3-week periods. Thank you for addressing that. In a way, yeah.
And then something that I'm not seeing addressed yet, but is definitely something to look at, or you know what, I'll talk about it when we move to the next slide. Yeah, it's definitely like a pacing chart. We have our standards, we have our skills to consider, and then when we move over to the next slide, what we've basically done is taken the old essential standards document and the reading behaviors and combined them into one document. So if you are looking at the standard, right underneath it are reading behaviors. And then you look at this standard and underneath it are reading behaviors. And then we still have our prerequisite skills. So we tried to take all of this and make it into a more usable and friendly document, especially since our focus is on narrowing the standards, right? So that's how that document is organized. Okay, so at this time, Jen is going to, let me make sure, I gotta follow my own script. Yes, so at this time, Jen is going to drop the link to the Essential Standards document in the chat. So you can open it up. I'm gonna give you a few minutes to actually explore it. When we come back though, be prepared to answer the question, what are some ways this could be useful for planning and teaching this year? So what are some ways this could be useful for planning and teaching this year? And like I said, Jen just dropped the link in the chat. You can click on that. I'm gonna put the music on for about 2 to 3 minutes, and then we'll be prepared to come back and share out. You know, I mean, Jen doesn't like this song. I'm gonna shuffle. Okay, so what we're going to do is Jen's gonna put the next link in the chat, and we are going to work together to add our thoughts to this shared document. So I told you to be prepared to come back and share. So Jen should just put the document link in the chat, and then you can add what are some ways this could be useful for planning and teaching this year. So you will just be able to type right into the document once you click on the link.
I'm seeing right now that it is a view-only file. Who is the owner?
Montreal, I believe, is the owner.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and make a copy of it. Unless.
I'll fix it right now.
All right, thank you.
Sorry. Did you already go ahead and put the link in?
Yeah, it's in there.
Okay. We're working on a technical difficulty. Please understand, because it's gonna happen.
Give yourselves a little bit of grace also,
right,
when doing this.
Also understand that I'm in the IT conference room and nothing is downloaded on these computers.
Oh, that's nice.
But I'm making it happen. We got it. We're fine. We're fine.
Oh. Dude, this kind of stuff is going to happen when we're working with our kids too. So we just have to kind of learn to be flexible and give each other grace on this. You know, technology is always our friend until it doesn't do what we want it to, right?
Yeah, we should definitely get shirts that say give a little grace. I mean, yeah.
I'm almost there.
Okay. Does anyone want to actually just share an answer while we're waiting? Like, are you comfortable to unmute yourself and share an answer while we're waiting? Or an idea, I guess. Anyone? Bueller? No?
Boom, done.
Okay.
Woohoo.
Okay, so go ahead and use the link that Jen put in the chat and go ahead and start adding your ideas to the chart. What are ways you could use the Essential Standards document for planning and teaching this year?
Whoa.
Nice.
I love this.
And what's great is you can use this exact same strategy with your students. You can have a shared doc where they all respond to a prompt.
You guys are so amazing this morning. I love it.
Kathy, maybe if you try to refresh. Perfect, Kathy. Thank you. And yes, well, we agree. And it's thank you for responding in the chat and participating. I'm sorry you can't open the document. I love that you guys have so many ideas. There are things on here I didn't think of. I love when we work together and we get to see what other people are thinking.
This is amazing.
Yes.
Opportunity to see the end goal. I love that.
I like the one who says you can use the skills necessary on the right to see where students are at, because you can even use that as like, you could even create a diagnostic using those prerequisite skills and say like, let's see what my kids already know, right? And then that way you could really even focus your teaching more.
And for additional resources.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to wrap up on this, and then we're going to actually look at some of the things that we've created using the Essential Standards documents. Montreal, do you see the question in the chat? That's a Montreal question.
Oh.
Kathy, we'll work on finding you an answer. We might have to put it in the district parking lot.
I'm going to put it for AR. I'm going to go ahead and put those both in the district parking lot. And once it's addressed, hopefully it is today.
Okay, it looks like we're all finished typing. So I'm going to go ahead and move us on. I love your ideas. I love your comments. And you guys, I like where you're going with this. And I'm glad that you are seeing that the document can be useful as well.
Oh, I'm going to get rid of that question.
So we are going to go ahead and let you look at the unit overview. The way we're going to do this is we're going to give you a few minutes to look at it first on your own and formulate some ideas and some questions. And then after that, we're going to put you into breakout groups to discuss it. So that's kind of how we're going to do that. I am going to show you just a couple of things first, and then we're going to send you off to explore. So basically, we took the essential standards and we narrowed them even more for the lessons that we created, which again, you can use or not use or adjust to how you see fit. So we created lesson plans, and you're going to see this when you get to start exploring, for read alouds, shared reads, and writing for each week. And so if you look at our read aloud lesson here, you can see there's a time frame for how long it would take. Of course, you're going to adjust how you want to do that. I need to move this so that I can move on. And we have standards, we have reading behaviors, the learning intentions, success criteria, the materials that you might need for the lesson are all linked to the lesson plan. And then prompts that you can discuss. What is the task? Your rubric, possibly. And then only in the first week, we actually scripted out a lesson. Possible lesson, how you could do it if you so choose. Of course, it's your lesson. You can do it how you see fit. But for those of you who might need some ideas, they're just in the week 1 lessons. Those lessons are pretty scripted out for you. And then the other thing, so that's kind of how all of the lessons are laid out. They're all laid out using the same lesson plan template, essentially. We have our key features. So this one was a read aloud. So it had an explicit reading strategy, focus on meaning. There's a think aloud, open-ended questions, and encourage to use the strategies. And if you want to look at those in the future, they are linked for you for the lesson key features. And then the final thing, keep moving that because of my screen, is a link to, there will be just in the first week, links, 3 videos for a read aloud, the shared read, and the writing lesson. So what we're gonna do before we go off is we're gonna actually just watch one of the videos. Now these videos aren't intended to show them to the kids. The videos are intended for you, so you can watch them and see like how might you do a virtual read aloud, right? So so they're for you, not for the students. You don't just, yeah. And so we'll just go from here, and then we can discuss.
We are going to start our first lesson on To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. We're going to do a read aloud of pages 6 through 11. And before we start, let's review our learning intentions. So for today, our learning intention is I can make inferences about characters in the story in order to understand their thoughts and actions. And our success criteria is I can cite evidence to support my inferences about the characters. I can contribute to discussions and express my thinking. And before we start reading, we're going to talk about what an inference is and why it's important. So if you look on the screen, an inference is a conclusion or opinion that is formed because of known facts or evidence. When you infer, you pay attention to details from the text, video, or image, and you use other information from the text or your own background knowledge, filling gaps between what is literally said or shown and what the author expects the reader to understand. So you're going to take information from the book and try to infer information about the characters through their thoughts, feelings, actions, or what other people say about them. Before we start the book, we are going to watch a little introduction video to the book. So right now we are going to switch over and take a look at the video.
The Deep South during the Great Depression. 6-year-old Scout, the daughter of defense attorney Atticus Finch, sees the world as both idyllically good and terrifyingly evil. Investigating the mystery of her reclusive neighbor, Boo Radley, she struggles with her conflicting views of the world as her widowed father is burdened with defending a black man charged with raping a white woman. Read the quintessential American coming-of-age tale of racism, justice, and integrity in Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird.
So, based on the video, I would like you to use the chat to answer the question on the screen. After viewing the video, what are your feelings about reading the novel To Kill a Mockingbird? And again, you're going to answer this question in the chat. Excellent. At this point, I'm going to actually begin reading you the story. So from chapter 1, people moved slowly then. They ambled across the square, shuffled in and out of the stores around it, took their time about everything. The day was 24 hours long, but it seemed longer. There was no hurry, for there was nowhere to go, nothing to buy, and no money to buy it with, nothing to see outside the boundaries of Macomb County. But it was a time of vague optimism for some people. Macomb County had recently been told that it had nothing to fear but fear itself. We lived on the main street in town, Atticus, Jim, and I, plus Calpurnia, our cook. Jim and I found our father satisfactory. He played with us, read to us, and treated us with courteous detachment. Calpurnia was something else again. She was all angles and bones, and she was nearsighted. She squinted. Her hand was wide as a bed slat and twice as hard. She was always ordering me out of the kitchen, asking me why I couldn't behave as well as Jim when she knew he was older, and calling me home when I wasn't ready to come home. Our battles were epic and one-sided. Calpurnia always won, mainly because Atticus always took her side. She had been with us ever since Jim was born, and I had felt her tyrannical presence as long as I could remember. I'm going to pause here and we're going to talk about one of our vocabulary words. Based on Scout's description, what do you think tyrannical means? Go ahead and type it in the chat. It's just a prediction. Check what you know. Tyrannical means unjustly cruel, harsh, or severe. So in Scout's opinion, she thinks that Calpurnia is a little harsh or unjustly or unfairly cruel. And we are going to resume the story. Our mother died when I was 2, so I never felt her absence. She was a Graham from Montgomery. Atticus met her when he was first elected to the state legislature. He was middle-aged then. She was 15 years his junior. Jim was the product of their first year of marriage. 4 years later, I was born. And 2 years later, our mother died from a sudden heart attack. They said it ran in her family. I did not miss her, but I think Jim did. He remembered her clearly, and sometimes in the middle of the game, he would sigh at length, then go off and play by himself behind the car house. When he was like that, I knew better than to bother him. When I was almost 6 and Jim was nearly 10, our summertime boundaries, within calling distance of Calpurnia, were Miss Henry Lafayette Dubois' house 2 doors to the north of us, and the Radley place 3 doors to the south. We were never tempted to break them. The Radley place was inhabited by an unknown entity, the mere description of whom was enough to make us behave for days on end. And Miss Dubois was plain hell. So this time I'm going to pause and ask you another question. So far, what can we tell about Scout and Gem? Again, you're going to answer in the chat. And before we move on reading, we're going to add a couple of characters from the story to our character chart. You're not going to add anything yet. I'm just adding information because we're going to use this chart later in a writing assignment. So let's go ahead and add them to the chart. We have Scout and we have Gem. And now we will go back to reading our story.
Just so you know, that was my first time ever recording myself reading. So that was lots of fun. It was very interesting. And so those are just, so actually I just wanted to have you take some time to process a little bit. What did you notice about the lesson plans and what about the video? Like, what did you see? How do you think you could, how do you think you can use read aloud in a virtual world? So you can go ahead, think about that for a few minutes. Not a few minutes, about a minute. And then we can respond in the chat before we move on. So what did you think of the lesson exemplar and the video? How do you think they would be helpful? What did you notice? And I see some people have already been putting things in the chat, so that's excellent.
Oh, thanks, Jason.
So Jason, you'll see when you get access to the unit in just a minute or two, there is a little like intro to the unit slideshow, which gives the kids some, not a lot, some background knowledge about who the characters are and what's going on. And clearly you could add to that slideshow, make your own copy and put as much background information as you want. It talks about, the slideshow talks a little bit about the themes that we're going to be addressing. So there is a little Google Slides lesson put together already that will give them some background knowledge, and clearly you can add anything else that you want to that. So there is, but at least it's a jumping off point for you.
Oh, good. Yeah, Alexis, you do not have to use this novel. If you don't want to, you are more than welcome to pick whatever novel you do want to start the year out with.
Great, Wendy. Thank you. I'm glad that it was helpful.
Just a little side note, because this is asked in every session, so I'm just going to say it before you guys can ask it. The non-negotiable for the district is the use of the essential standards. The pacing isn't even non-negotiable. Your school site may make that non-negotiable, but that is not non-negotiable per the district. We just want we want to be using the same essential standards. They are, we spend a lot of time developing them so that they are articulated from K all the way through 8, and as well as the prerequisite skills that go with it. So if you go to the grade levels before, you can also find more prerequisite skills. So that is the non-negotiable. The content is up to the teacher unless your specific school site says different.
Go ahead and pop the link to me. It's in the chat.
Stand by.
Okay, so what's going to happen next is Jen is going to drop the link to the unit overview in the chat. And I'm going to give you guys a good 5 minutes to look at the whole unit overview for the whole.
Oh, I already included the unit overview. Are you wanting the Google Sites?
The unit plan? The 9-week unit plan?
This, oh, I already showed that.
Oh, it's already shared?
Yeah.
She says it's already shared. So we're gonna take time now to have you really look at the unit though. I really want you to spend time. So you should be, she said that the link is already in the chat. So it looks like this. And then, where is my?
Oh, you want that? Shit.
No, I didn't want, that's not what I was thinking next.
Okay, it's, I'm gonna go ahead and reshare it for you guys. So you don't have to scroll up.
I'm gonna have to use that one too. There we go. Yeah, so this is our unit overview for the first 9 weeks of school. If you notice, I'm gonna minimize the chat. You can, so week 1 is here from August 17th to August 21st. There is a couple of things I want you to see, and then I'm gonna really give you 5 minutes to just check it all out. Is that we have a read aloud for each week, a shared read for each week, and a writing prompt for each week. What I will tell you is that the writing prompts are all based on either the read aloud or the shared read or both. So you wouldn't be able to start the week with the writing prompt unless you're just going to give it to them as like, hey, we're going to be writing about this later. Keep this in mind as we're reading. But they wouldn't be able to answer the question in the writing prompt until they've done the read aloud and the shared read. So they build on each other. And so that is one of the main things that you would want to remember when you're planning. And I also just want to pull out like we have the standards for every lesson every week. So the standards are not for one particular lesson, they're the standards for the week. So you would have to check that out and see which ones match which lessons. And other than that, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to look at all of the slides and just explore and check it out. And these are links, so you can look at all of it. So I'm going to put some music on. I'm going to put on a timer for 5 minutes. Just have at it. Stuff going on in the chat. Let's see.
Look how responding. Okay, so next we will send them to the district website, and then I want to put them in breakout. So send them to the district website, give them, how much time should we give them to explore before we put them in breakout groups to discuss? 3 minutes? 5 minutes? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's gonna be a lot. I usually don't take a look at things a lot. Just to do all of these things.
I'm gonna and share about this, and then we'll send them to the district website.
All right, and we're gonna wrap up in about 30 seconds. And 10 seconds. All right. So before we move on to our final piece of exploration, which will actually be the district website with all of the resources, I would like for you guys to share out your feelings about the unit plan. Just go ahead and unmute yourself, and let's have some actual voices in on this one. I like to hear you and see you if I can. So if you can just chime in, what do you see? What do you like? What do you notice? What do you wonder? Anything. Jason, you joining?
Yeah.
Excellent.
I really I like how it's started from one area and it kind of goes through the progression. And as I think week over week, as the kids learn how to use online, I think they'll be more and more involved as we use this framework that you kind of presented. And going back to, I don't have the slide in front, but if you look at the continuation of learning how they move forward on the DOK from a teacher perspective, I think it follows that pretty well.
Thank you. Anyone else? What do you want to add? Don't be shy. What? I do see some people are posting things in the chat.
I just like how it's pretty laid out there for us, because I feel kind of overwhelmed at this point. So I really like, maybe I won't feel so overwhelmed later, but I like that everything is just right there.
Great. And as you're going to see when we go next to the actual, like, I call it the dashboard. I don't know what it's officially called, but basically it's the BCSD site for distance learning. You'll be able to even check out more resources there. So we're gonna go there next. Jen, have you already put the link in the chat?
Doing it right now.
Okay, so Jen is putting the link in the chat, and it's gonna take you to our district. I call it the district dashboard, but basically it's where we start. And so you'll notice over here we have lessons by grade level, and so we're in 8th grade right now. If you teach more than one grade level, you can just go to the home button and it'll give you the options for the other grade levels. So then we can go this right here, we're on ELA, and then I need to be able to keep down. If you go down, you'll see there's the essential standards, the unit plan, and then week 1, and it has your read aloud, your shared read, vocabulary list. There's a vocabulary lesson that ties in, the modeled writing. And then if you click on those, it'll give you the lesson plan for that. The videos are supposed to be here next to the lessons. I'm trying to see why I don't see them. They were here and now they're not. I will research that while you're exploring. But I'm gonna give you again 5 minutes to just look at everything on this dashboard, and then we will come back, and then we're gonna actually put you guys in breakout groups after that. So go ahead and take 5 minutes, and then we will come back and do breakout groups. All right, so go ahead and take 5 minutes to check out this, because this is the district website. It'll have everything for you. What happened to the light? She changed the layout. Sure. Because like the slides aren't here. Like, where's everything? Hmm? Not on the read aloud, it's not. I like it better than if she had it organized before. So yours is there for the sugar. What about the writing? Maybe she just made a mistake on the other one. No, the writing one's not there either. It says there's some copy. Oh,
Or if
there.
you put on the view, it
It says what? Hmm?
on that, you put on the real one, you're gonna get it.
Here comes it. So somebody specifically asking me where to find the videos. Okay, we have about 30 seconds left on the exploring. And then we're going to go ahead and break out into our breakout discussions. So Now you probably have about 20 seconds left. Are you reading the breakout rooms are set up and ready to go?
2 participants will go 3 in a room.
Sounds good.
How many minutes?
Okay. That would be 7 participants. If we're doing 3, 6. Okay. Okay, so at this time, Jen is setting up the breakout rooms. You guys are going to jump in there and have a discussion. Talk about one of the lessons or the lesson plans, discuss the possibilities for creating these lessons with a virtual, hybrid, or traditional model. And then nominate a spokesperson from your group who's going to be willing to share out what you discussed. So from each group, find somebody who's going to be willing to share out what your group discussed. I will leave this on the screen so you know what you're talking about. And I think, Jen, are we ready?
Ready.
All right, you're about to zoom off to breakout rooms. Oh, you invited me to join the breakout room.
No.
Yes.